Welcome back to True Crime Documentary YouTube channel. On a warm evening in 2017, as the sun dipped behind the towering skyline of Dubai, the bustling city seemed like a world apart, one filled with luxury, wealth, and dazzling lights. But hidden behind the glamour, a tragic tale was unfolding, one that would unravel the darkest secrets of the rich and powerful. A young Indian girl, once full of hopes and dreams, would soon become a victim of a sinister obsession. In the shadow of the towering buildings and opulent palaces, Zara Khan's fate was sealed in a way no one could have imagined. By the time the police uncovered the chilling details, it was already too late. She was dead, her only testament to the horrors she endured, a hidden phone, and 142 voice recordings. The last message, sent from the luxurious palace where fairy tales turned to nightmares, would expose everything. Zara Khan was a bright, ambitious 17-year-old girl who grew up in the bustling streets of Hyderabad's old city. The narrow lanes, adorned with chai shops and ancient minarets, were home to generations of families like hers, hard-working yet struggling to make ends meet. The eldest of 4 daughters, Zara carried the weight of her family's dreams on her slender shoulders. Her mother, Amira, often described her as the backbone of their household, a girl who balanced her studies with part-time tutoring to help sustain the family. Her father, Rashid, a rickshaw driver, was their sole breadwinner until a tragic accident left him bedridden. The family's fragile finances spiraled into debt as medical bills mounted, school fees piled up, and basic necessities became a luxury. Despite the hardships, Zara remained resilient. Her dreams of becoming a teacher were her guiding light, a beacon of hope for a better future. However, desperation soon crept into their small 2-room home. Amira began working as a housemaid, scrubbing floors in wealthy neighborhoods, but it wasn't enough. Debt collectors became a constant presence, their landlord threatened eviction, and the family's options grew slimmer by the day. It was during this time that Amina Begum, a local marriage broker, entered their lives. Known for her persuasive charm and gilded promises, Amina preyed on families like Zara's, offering them an escape from their plight through arranged marriages with wealthy men from Dubai. When she first approached the Khans, her words were honeyed with promises of luxury, stability, and hope. The deal seemed too good to be true. A wealthy sheikh, a palace in Dubai, and a dowry that could solve all their problems. For Zara, the weight of her family's despair was unbearable. She agreed, believing that this marriage would be her way of saving them. But behind her composed exterior, fear and uncertainty loomed. Little did she know that the decision made in desperation would lead her into a nightmare beyond her worst imaginings. When Zara first arrived in Dubai, she was struck by the sheer opulence of it all. The city, known for its towering skyscrapers and golden sunsets, seemed like a paradise to someone from her modest upbringing in Hyderabad. The Sheikh, Khalid bin Muhammad Al Noan, lived in a sprawling palace nestled in the exclusive Emirates Hills area. The palace, with its marble floors, grand chandeliers, and walls lined with priceless art, felt like something out of a dream. At first, Khalid seemed every bit the caring husband. He showered Zara with expensive gifts, a new wardrobe filled with designer clothes, diamond jewelry, and a golden iPhone. The staff treated her with an air of respect, and she was given a luxurious bedroom with views of the city skyline. The transition from her small home in Hyderabad to this glittering palace was nothing short of overwhelming. For a brief moment, Zara even believed that she might live the life of a princess, just as Amina had promised, but it didn't take long for the cracks in the facade to appear. As the days passed, Zara began to notice Khalid's controlling nature. His behavior, which at first seemed charming, slowly morphed into something darker, Every part of her life was meticulously monitored. There were cameras in every room, sensors on the doors, and motion detectors that alerted Khalid whenever she moved from one place to another. The once seemingly grand gesture of luxury now felt more like a gilded cage. Zara's every action was scrutinized. She was not allowed to leave the palace without Khalid's permission, and even when she was out shopping for clothes, he would monitor her choices from afar, ensuring that her purchases were modest and within his control. Every time she stepped out of line or questioned anything, the consequences were swift and severe. A wrong word, a misplaced gesture, and Khalid would lash out, his temper unpredictable. As the months went on, Zara's feelings of entrapment grew stronger. The luxury and wealth that initially seemed like a dream now felt like a constant reminder of her isolation. She no longer had control over her life. Khalid did. Yet, even in the face of this overwhelming power, Zara found herself clinging to the one thing that still offered her a sense of hope: her family back home. She would secretly call her mother, Amira, whenever she could, but Khalid's suspicions grew as he noticed Zara's attachment to her past life. The calls became less frequent, the conversations shorter, and the fear of being caught more palpable. It was during one of these rare, stolen moments on the phone with her mother that Zara began to unravel a disturbing truth. Khalid's obsession with her wasn't just about controlling her. He had a pattern. Zara was not the first young girl he had married. In fact, she soon realized that she was part of a much larger network, an underground operation that trafficked young brides from India, Pakistan, and other impoverished countries to the UAE. These girls were sold off to wealthy men like Khalid, who would use them for a time before discarding them when they were no longer useful. Zara discovered this through a series of letters she found hidden in Khalid's private study. The letters detailed the histories of other girls he had married, each one younger than the last. Some of them were abandoned after just a few months. Others had simply disappeared, their fates never known. It became clear to Zara that her life had been reduced to a commodity, a transaction in a business of exploitation and despair. As her understanding of Khalid's true nature deepened, Zara began to see through the veneer of luxury that had initially fooled her. The golden iPhone, the expensive clothing, the fine meals, all of it was designed to make her feel special, to make her feel indebted to him. It was a psychological game. Khalid wanted to break her spirit, to reshape her into someone who would never question him. He wanted her to believe that she owed him everything, that without him, she would return to the misery she had come from. But Zara was not as easily broken as Khalid thought. She knew that the only way to escape this gilded prison was to expose him. She began secretly recording her conversations with Khalid, documenting the psychological and physical abuse she endured. She even managed to hide a small pink phone, a gift from Maria, the Filipino maid who had become one of her few allies in the palace. Maria had seen the fate of the other young brides and knew that Zara needed proof to survive. As the months dragged on, Zara's recordings grew more desperate. Each one told a story of humiliation, pain, and fear. The recordings became her lifeline, a way to keep her sanity intact in the face of Khalid's relentless obsession. In these recordings, Zara detailed the abusive behaviors she had suffered, beatings for trivial mistakes, constant surveillance, and the psychological torment of living under a man who viewed her as nothing more than a possession. But despite her efforts, the tension continued to escalate. Khalid's suspicions grew, and he became increasingly paranoid. He began to monitor her more closely, checking her phone for any signs of communication with the outside world. The staff, who had initially treated her with kindness, were now too fearful of Khalid to offer any real help. Even Maria, who had tried to slip Zara extra painkillers, was too afraid to act on her behalf. One evening, after Zara had spent too long on a video call with her sister, Khalid's anger reached a boiling point. He stormed into her room, his eyes wild with rage. He accused her of plotting against him, of conspiring with her family. Zara tried to explain, to tell him that it was just a conversation with her sister, but Khalid would not listen. His hands shook with fury as he slapped her across the face, leaving a deep bruise on her cheek. The physical abuse was only the beginning. As Zara's world contracted further, the emotional and psychological torment intensified. Khalid installed even more surveillance, microphones, heat sensors, and motion detectors, watching her every move. He monitored her weight, forcing her to maintain an exact number on the scale. Every moment of her life was controlled, dictated by the whims of a man who saw her as nothing more than an object to be shaped and molded into perfection. Zara knew that her situation was deteriorating. The secret phone she had hidden became her only means of survival, her only way to keep a record of the horrors she was enduring. She began to record her final messages, knowing that time was running out. The last recording, sent just hours before her death, was addressed to her mother. "Ami, forgive me," she whispered. "I thought I could endure anything to save our family. I didn't know there were things worse than poverty." Zara's courage to record her story, even as she faced the growing wrath of Khalid, would ultimately prove to be her legacy. It would expose the dark underbelly of a world where wealth and power shielded the most monstrous acts of abuse, but it would also cost her everything. Zara's last moments were a tragic culmination of months of psychological and physical abuse. The final days of her life were marked by increasing tension and fear. She knew that her time was running out, and every move she made could be her last. Khalid's obsession with her had reached its peak, and Zara had become his prisoner in every sense of the word. On the morning of her death, Zara's body was discovered in a locked room within the Sheikh's palace. It was a cold, lifeless scene, her body lying motionless on the marble floor, a subtle hint of struggle in the air. The room was barren, devoid of any warmth or personal belongings. The only thing that remained was the teddy bear she had hidden her phone in. The pink phone, now a crucial piece of evidence, lay untouched on the floor, a silent witness to the horrors Zara had endured. When the police arrived, they were met with a palace that seemed like any other, a place of wealth, beauty, and prestige. But beneath the surface, they quickly realized that something was terribly wrong. Zara's death was not a mere accident. It was a carefully orchestrated crime, one that had been covered up with deliberate precision. The rooms were locked, the windows sealed tight, and the staff remained eerily quiet. Khalid the Sheikh had disappeared by the time the authorities arrived, leaving nothing but a trail of questions. The lead investigator, Inspector Kabir Khan, took charge of the case. His first instinct was to piece together the mystery surrounding Zara's death. As he scoured the palace for clues, he found a series of strange discrepancies. The initial evidence pointed to a possible suicide, but something didn't sit right with Khan. The room where Zara was found was meticulously clean, and there were no signs of struggle. Yet the emotional tension in the air was palpable, as if something had been hidden beneath the surface. It was Zara's hidden recordings that would ultimately expose the truth. When the phone was discovered, the officers played the voice messages left by Zara in her final days. The haunting recordings revealed the horrific nature of her captivity, her fears, her desperation, and the torment she had suffered at the hands of Khalid. Each recording was more chilling than the last, and the final message was the most damning of all. In the recording, Zara confessed to her mother, "Ami, forgive me. I thought I could endure anything to save our family. I didn't know there were things worse than poverty." The message was a cry for help, a final plea for someone to understand the pain she had endured. The recordings were the key to unlocking the mystery. They revealed Khalid's twisted obsession with Zara and the dark world of trafficking and exploitation that lay behind his public image. The investigation quickly gained traction as more details emerged, and soon it became clear that Zara was just one of many young girls who had fallen victim to Khalid's predatory behavior. But even with the recordings, the case was far from straightforward. Khalid was a powerful man, and his connections ran deep. The authorities had to tread carefully, as the political ramifications of exposing such a high-profile individual could have far-reaching consequences. But the evidence was undeniable, and the case began to unravel with each passing day. As the investigation progressed, Inspector Khan uncovered a network of brokers, corrupt officials, and middlemen who had been facilitating the trafficking of young brides for years. Zara's story was just one of many, and her tragic death would become the catalyst for exposing an international trafficking ring that had operated in the shadows for decades. The investigation would span across borders, with both Indian and UAE authorities working together to dismantle the network. But for the Khan family, the discovery of Zara's recordings brought little solace. Her death had shattered their world. Amira, her mother, wept for the daughter she had lost, for the future that would never be. Zara had sacrificed everything for her family's well-being, but in the end, it was her life that had been stolen from her. The crime, the investigation, and the uncovering of the trafficking network would send shockwaves through both India and the UAE. But for Zara's family, the damage had already been done. No amount of justice could bring back their daughter, and no conviction could undo the pain they would carry for the rest of their lives. The courtroom was tense as Khalid bin Mohammed Al Noan stood trial. His image as a wealthy sheikh crumbled under the weight of the evidence against him. The prosecution presented Zara's voice recordings and testimony from those who had witnessed his abuse, while the defense painted him as a misunderstood man. Amira Khan, Zara's mother, took the stand, her voice shaking with grief as she spoke of her daughter's dreams and the horrors that had stolen them. Her emotional testimony moved the jury, and even the defense struggled to counter her pain. Inspector Kabir Khan knew the case was reaching its climax. The investigation had unearthed a global trafficking network, but it was Zara's courage, her recordings, that had exposed the truth. The defense tried to shift the blame onto others, but the prosecution's closing argument was decisive. This wasn't a tragic love story. It was an act of control, manipulation, and murder. Khalid Al Noan's reign of terror ends here. Just when it seemed that the case was about to reach its conclusion, a shocking twist turned everything on its head. New evidence emerged, hidden in the depths of Khalid's past, a series of secretive bank transactions that pointed to a much larger conspiracy. Inspector Khan's suspicions grew as he discovered that Khalid wasn't acting alone. In fact, there were other powerful figures behind the trafficking ring, officials and businessmen who had been complicit in Zara's exploitation. The final piece of the puzzle came when one of the palace staff, who had remained silent throughout the investigation, came forward with a startling confession. Maria, the Filipino maid, revealed that she had secretly witnessed Khalid's dealings with a corrupt politician, someone Zara had unknowingly interacted with. It turned out that Maria's kindness to Zara had been more than just compassion. It was an act of rebellion, a desperate attempt to help Zara escape before it was too late. Khalid's world began to unravel. The Sheikh, once untouchable, was no longer the sole architect of Zara's suffering. The investigation shifted focus to uncover the full extent of the network, exposing a web of high-profile individuals who had been hiding in plain sight. As the trial came to an end, Khalid bin Mohammed Al Noan was convicted of multiple crimes, including human trafficking, abuse, and the murder of Zara Khan. His sentencing sent shockwaves through both Dubai and India, but for Zara's family, justice could never truly heal the wounds of their loss. The exposure of the trafficking network sparked an international outcry, leading to investigations that would dismantle the system that had allowed such horrors to flourish for years. But Zara's story wasn't just one of victimhood. It was one of bravery, of a young girl who had fought back against a system that sought to break her. Her recordings, her final messages, became a symbol of the voices that were silenced in the shadows of power and wealth. For Amira, Zara's death had shattered the dreams she once held for her family. Yet, in the end, it was Zara's courage that would forever echo through the lives of those who knew her. The case was a reminder of the dark secrets that can lurk behind the most polished facades, and how often those who are most vulnerable are the ones who bear the brunt of society's evils. The investigation and trial had ended, but the scars remained on Zara's family, the community, and even the investigators who had been forced to confront a world of unspeakable cruelty. Zara had paid the ultimate price for her bravery, but her story would inspire change. Sometimes, Amira whispered in her final statement to the press, the most dangerous predators hide in plain sight. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Be sure to check out our other videos for more captivating stories. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.